Chapter 2. However, what kind of fundamental theory exists in this world? Falme pulled his face back from the window as soon as he realized there was a possibility that the laws of physics were different for this parallel world. Even with this ability, am I only able to do water? He quietly stared at the hands that didn't seem to even belong to him. For some reason, as long as he was able to visualize the molecular structure of water, he would actually be able to produce it. Could I make any other compounds if I could imagine the arrangement? He sent an image to the silver cup as he poured some power that he used not long ago into it. The cup then received the compound and began to darken immediately. It was proof that sulfide reacted with silver. So it is possible, but this is bad. It darkened. It will cause trouble for Lot if this silverware was stained. Depending on the circumstances, she could very well be accused of poisoning him. Disappear, disappear, he said casually as he polished the silver with the hem of his clothes. The sulfide in the cup vanished and silver's luster returned. It did not fade away when he wiped it. It just vanished spontaneously. The substance actually disappeared. Is it really possible to remove it? He repeated the process several more times to confirm his suspicion. Instead of a hazardous substance, he decided to create sugar this time, and then licked it. It was sweet. Next he created table salt and licked it too. It was salty. He then made a lump of iron and licked it. It had a strong iron taste. The pure gold ingot was soft and his teeth left marks in it when he bit it. He kept testing the ability in myriad different ways, but the end result was the same. He could create any substance he wanted by sending an image of how it was arranged to his hands. The skill was limited though. He couldn't create a chemical compound that he wasn't able to clearly imagine or ones that were too complex. Whatever he made with his left hand could be erased by his right hand. The left hand creates, and the right hand destroys. He could even erase something that he didn't bring into being himself as long as he understood its chemical composition. This is great. Although he didn't understand the principle behind it, he seemed sure that he had the ability to create and erase materials. I'm like an alchemist. It's an ability that I would like to take back to Japan. His research would have surely progressed if he could have used this ability when he was still in Japan. This research, and that research. Yes, even the research. Wait a minute, what research was it? He couldn't help but think like that. Falme was a workaholic whose mind was still fixated on what he had wanted to accomplish in his previous life. I can't go home. I should give up on it. Regardless of how much lingering affection he had, it wasn't possible to return to Earth. I should forget my previous life entirely and start anew. Falme finally made up his mind. I am happy. I feel really relieved. Lot hurriedly returned to Falme's room and changed the bedsheets. It seems like her work involves taking care of Falme's daily necessities. Even though it was an upper-class home, the beds of this world were very simple. They were simple hay-filled boxes covered by a bedsheet. Lot was surprised when Falme started helping her in laying out the bed. Please do not help, as this is my work. Is that so? I'm sorry. However, she still said her thanks, as she was someone that never forgot to show her appreciation. That is good, Master Falme. You've recovered your divine art. It seems you will be able to recover your lost memory a little bit at a time as well. Falme was comforted by the tune Lot hummed as she was putting away his laundry. She had a beautiful voice. I was foolish to think for even a moment that Falme-sama could not use his divine art anymore. Remind me. What is our family business, again? Lot stopped working, as she proudly stood up and said, the de Medicis family is a family of royal court apothecaries, family of apothecaries. Falme figured he could use his ability to create compounds using his prior knowledge in pharmacology and science, despite the laws of physics being a bit different from those in his old world. Good, I can still use my job. He was relieved for the time being. After that, Falme was able to get a good grasp of the situation with help from his servant Lot. She had received an explanation about this world from Lot. This place resembles France. Falme entertained such impressions. The language, culture, and clothes closely resembled that of medieval France. Charlotte, also known as Lot, was the daughter of Catherine, the senior maid. They were commoners. Her mother was in charge of taking care of Falma, while Lot accompanied her mother when going in and out of Falma's room. She had been working in this house since she was 5 years old. She was now 9 years old. A servant's career was very long, since they started at a very young age. They used honorifics, and each of their movements felt graceful. However, just between you and me, aren't you just doing forced labor? Are you being beaten and abused in the premises that I don't know about? Are you able to eat your meals? Lot pouted when Falma asked that question. What are you talking about? We've been given a good life by his lordship. Don't you want to become free? Don't you want to go to school? You are so kind, you know. However, I am being taught to read and write in this mansion, and I have days off too. I am satisfied with this. Falma imagined that the servants were treated like slaves, but they were treated very well as employees. Both mother and child consented to this. Food, clothing, and shelter were guaranteed. Furthermore, they had salaries too. They said it was not hard labor and that it wasn't painful to work in the mansion. Since they were not slaves, he was told that they could leave the mansion whenever they pleased. Then it's fine, yes. Please take good care of us from now on. It would be troublesome if you were expelled from the mansion. The servants understood that the steward was the chief of about 100 personnel deployed in and out of the residence. The mansion was made entirely of stone and featured a U-shape. The style closely resembled that of the transition period of the Baroque. Insert note here. The mansion was old, as you could feel the history of it. By the way, will you tell me about the mansion? With pleasure. Falma asked Lot about the structure of the mansion. The building had 3 floors, a basement where the stockroom for the medicine was located, and an attic. It boasted the land area of a small castle. The first floor had the entrance hall, reception room, and the main hall. The second floor was where the parent and children rooms were. That is to say, Falma's room was on the second floor facing the courtyard. All the servants lived in the attic. Lot said that the mansion was too big, as she had not been through all of the rooms yet. It certainly is a prestigious family. Yes, it is a proud residence. It has been more than 200 years since it was built, Lot responded with a cheerfulness that showed her innocence. Can I ask you a question about me? What it is you want to know? My name. Falma, Pharmaceuticals de Medicis, pharmacist. Don't you think it's a bad name? Pharmaceuticals is not that appealing. Falma was ashamed. Fufu. Your honorable elder brother is called Master Pelul, you know. His lordship has high expectations for Master Pelul's and Master Falma's future. Pelul seemed to mean pill. There was a more unfortunate person than me. Falma was somewhat attracted to his father's strong attitude towards pharmaceutics. His lordship will return to the mansion tonight. Master Falma will join for dinner, then. What is it? Falma braced himself as Lot seemed to be in a panic. Koku, could it be that you completely forgot your pharmaceutical knowledge? I think I forgot it, but this is bad. This is a serious emergency. As Lot said it, Falma sensed an impending crisis. He took one of the books lined up on the bookshelf in the room and quickly skimmed it. All the books in this world were made by manually copying each one, so the medical journals and the pharmaceutical books are very expensive. Nevertheless, it was obvious that the family was really rich, as you could see thick books lined up on the bookshelf in Falma's room for his personal use. You have to be careful, Master Falma, as his lordship will usually question you regarding pharmaceutics without warning. The original Falma had been given a special education since childhood. Lot testified that he was able to memorize all of the pharmaceuticals and compounding methods written on the book. This was a serious matter. He couldn't memorize all of it as soon as possible, even with the knowledge and skills he had. Even though Falma was in a hurry. It wasn't necessary. I think I have seen this before. I remember this. The accumulated knowledge from the original Falma merged with him. He was able to read the medical journal and pharmaceutical book, and could vaguely remember the contents of it. As for this, is it difficult? It is difficult for me. Lot seemed terrified, as he just shrugged his shoulder. The girl has difficulties reading the words packed together in the book. And she was slightly captivated by Falma, who was reading a troublesome book with a serious face. Falma would have certainly told her not to make a fuss. This is terrible, to put it bluntly. What was written on the various books that he picked up were horrifying. Wrong treatment methods, and the medicine recipes were full of poisons. It was no longer a medical treatment if you prayed to the gods, controlled illnesses through astrology, deciphered numerology, and so on. It was substantially in the wrong direction. It was completely made of charms and spells. They just overlooked those kinds of medical practice. In this world, illnesses are trials given by the gods, was the basic idea. Medical pharmacology and religion were closely related with astrology. They depended on prayers and confusingly chasing the movements of the stars. The medical science and pharmaceutical knowledge of this world were miserable. This is the dark age of medical treatment of this world. Falma was irritated when he thought that a healthy person could almost die from such a medical treatment. Falma-sama, are your eyes tired? Please rest for a little bit, Tilda. After I read some more, Lot quietly watched without disturbing Falma, who was immersed in the book for so many hours while moving about gallantly. Falma-sama is surely hard-working. And his figure is dreamy, and she looked toward him in admiration. Falma closed the book when the room became dim. He stretched his neck left and right and murmured quietly, I have to do something for the sake of the people of this world. Perhaps he was reincarnated with his previous life's knowledge just for that. Such a thought crossed his mind. Chapter 3. Fanfare resounded in the mansion. Is something starting? It is time to eat. Falma-sama, Lot called out to him in a hurry. I'm getting hungry. Will you come and eat, Lot? Anyone would get hungry, not matter what they did. After the master is done, it's time for the servants to eat. I got it. It's Lot's growth period, so she needed to eat dinner early. So, he hurried on. Falma checked the faces of the family members who had gathered on the dining room for the first time. You're up. I sent you to bed since you were sleeping. Yes, I'm sorry to have caused you worry. The first one to greet Falma was a man with a blonde beard and blue eyes. The person was tall and lean with a sharp glint in his eyes. It was the master of the mansion and the father of Falma, Bruno de Medicis, 37 years old. He was a royal court pharmacist who did medical examination and prescribed medicine to generations of royalty and nobles. He also served as the president of San Fluive Royal School of Pharmaceutics in the royal capital. He was a user of divine art of water. An excellent aristocrat with special skill in this world. The title of Archduke was bestowed unto him. The ranks were Archduke, Duke, Marquis, Earl, Viscount, and Baron. In other words, those with the rank of Archduke were grand nobles. It's good that you have recovered, a lady with silver hair, blue eyes, and a neat demeanor called out to him. It was his mother, Beatrice, 34 years old. She came from a prestigious family of users of divine art of wind. Elder brother, a young woman who had blue eyes, curly blonde hair that reached her waist, and was full of charm, called out to Falma. It was his younger sister Blanche, 4 years old. Although young, she was a master of divine art of water, just like her father. She had a pretty face for her tender age. Falma was convinced that she would definitely become beautiful in the future. By the way, his elder brother who was away at the moment was Paluel, 16 years old. He was an elder brother whom Falma sympathized in regards to their names. An elite student in the most advanced pharmaceutical university which was located in the far foreign land, the Nova Root Pharmaceutical University. Since the rule was for all students to live in the dormitory, he only came home twice a year. Having met the family, he sat at the big table of the large dining room. His father prepared a porcelain basin for hand washing on top of the table, and poured clear water out using divine art of water. His younger sister, Blanche, poured water on his basin, and also filled his mother's basin. Even though his mother was a noble, the elemental attribute was different, so it's the daughter's job to produce water. Falma kept calm as the water in the basin in front of him was poured. He then washed his hands. Bread, knife and spoon were placed on top of the tablecloth. Blanche said the prayers to the gods, the family recited it, and the meal started. The meal is unexpectedly delicious. It started with chicken cordon bleu with plenty of spices, then wild rabbit stew was served. Falma obeyed what Lot said about table manners, and tried to eat slowly. Because he regretted the time where he was only eating something like calorie mate, his poor tongue very much served its purpose in this parallel world. I had worked too much and hadn't eaten a decent meal. He savored the taste of the parallel world while chewing each mouthful with relish. So Falma, is there still numbness in your body? Being struck by lightning. The dinner had just started, and Falma's mother was immediately anxious about him. Incidentally, the mother was the only one who was fond of wine in the family. The father was drinking water as he prepared for house calls from patients. The water he had made himself was very pure. He squeezed a lemon and the fragrance diffused through the air. My memory is just a little bit hazy, but I'll be able to remember it soon, so you don't have to worry, dear mother, Falma answered calmly. Lot had told him to use polite language to his parents, and to call them dear father and dear mother, as it should be for a second son of a grand noble. However, you survived by a hair's breadth. Your heart pulse stopped completely. It seems that the potion I gave you after you were struck by the lightning worked, the father interjected with satisfaction. It seemed to have increased his confidence in his skills as a pharmacist. Falma had had a cardiac arrest and stopped breathing, so the father had administered the potion orally. Falma almost choked his food. It was a good thing that he hadn't choked. Well, perhaps the potion was very effective. He thought about it, but he had seen the formulation written in the book, so there's no reason to doubt it. Since the original Falma was a quiet and calm person, it was necessary to behave the same, so as not to expose the real him. He began to think about what had happened to the original Falma. Because they had said that he had died once due to the lightning, perhaps the original memory would disappear. He felt like running away when he thought about it. He had taken over that body, and felt guilty about doing so. But the original Falma had died already, and his ego had disappeared. He held a memorial service in his mind, and decided to live up for the original Falma's sake. The pharmacologist and the original Falma had merged into one mind. However, if your memory is vague, I will be worried. I will take care of you so you don't have to stress yourself. If there is something troubling you, just say it. If there is anything you want to eat, I'll have them make it for you. Compared to the domineering father, the compassionate mother was more pleasant. Yes, thank you, dear mother. I'm happy that you said it. After his mother exchanged a word or two with Falma, she didn't feel some strange feeling that Falma's personality had changed. Falma thought about it too. Anyhow, having heard from a lot, the usual attitude and tone of the original Falma proved to be fortunate. You should rest in bed for a few days. Will you be able to join in the next house call? After the father was done eating, he wiped his mouth with a napkin and recalled that he needed to remind Falma of that. Falma forced a smile, but he didn't know what the father was referring to. The father then guessed that Falma's memory was still vague, so he added, "It's Her Majesty's house call, I remember now. I will go with you. An apprentice pharmacist must train by seeing the work of the mentor who was part of the job of the royal pharmacist." Even though the original Falma was only 10 years old, he usually helped his father during medical examinations. House call for the royalty and nobles were usually important, but this time, it's the highest status from among his father's patients. This was no ordinary person. When he said Her Majesty, he meant the Empire of Saint-Louis, Her Majesty Elizabeth II. This is a big job. Falma cowered at the thought of what kinds of medicine would be prescribed to the Empress. He prayed that he wouldn't be hanged if the treatment failed. By the way, about the ointment that was used recently on both of your burnt arms, what were the ingredients and compounding methods of Gilead? It appeared. That was the surprise pharmacology question that Lot was talking about. The main ingredient of the herbs are tin pyrite from Lahara region, oil concoction from Kateso, eye of a lizard, and powdered wing of the full moon night bat. The method is to boil it in holy water for one night while offering a prayer to purify it. Dry it the next day under the sun for 3 days, then ground it to fine dry powder. Having no time to think, the information from the book he had read earlier smoothly came out from Falma's mouth. He imitated the way the original Falma recited from memory. Although he instinctively blurted out the compounding method, he felt ashamed as a pharmacologist with a doctorate degree from modern Japan. However, it couldn't be helped, he had to do it this way. It would be troubling if he got kicked out of the mansion. You remembered. You are truly my son, his father nodded in great satisfaction, without knowing the real circumstances. By the way, because the suspicious ointment would develop a rash or inflammation if contact with the skin was prolonged, a shorter duration was the correct solution. In that respect, he quickly wiped off the medical herb, and washed the arm in clean water. The satisfied father didn't knew he had done so. All right. Since there are no particular problems in your physical condition, can you resume going back to Eleonora's lecture tomorrow? It's a person I don't know. He later got the information from Lot, Eleonora Bonfoy, the top pharmacist, disciple of his father, and the tutor of Falma. You're suspicious. You're absolutely suspicious. It's like you're a different person. The woman in front of Falma drew shapes with her fingers on the table as she murmured those words. Falma winced at the voice of the young lady sitting across him. She was Falma's private tutor, and the top disciple of his father, a pharmacist with top-class beauty, Eleonora Bonfoy, 16 years old. Her lustrous silver hair parted onto both sides, giving her a cool impression. She wore a tight, long, matte, textured, light sky blue dress skirt with a daring slit that emphasized her every move. Her shoulder was completely bare. He was too embarrassed to look at her ample bust when her hands were crossed under it. That dress is too liberal. She has glasses even. If this world was equivalent to medieval Europe, Falma had assumed that the clothing culture would be more appropriate for that era, but it did not seem necessarily so. Indeed, the de Medici's family wore medieval conservative clothing. If anything, her attire was casual for a fantasy world. It was indeed a parallel world. And Falma was admiring her. Is that so? You're just imagining it. You're too formal. Using honorifics, Falma regretted that he hadn't learned the conversation pattern with Ellen. Because it was a student-teacher relationship, he had assumed he needed to use honorifics. How to speak to her? Should I act like being too friendly with a teacher character? The meeting place with Eleonora was on a riverbank that flowed along the premises of the mansion. Located in the center of a garden was a Western-style gazebo made of white stone. The sunlight was blocked by the domed roof, and the wind blowing over the garden was comfortable and pleasant. Two people sat across each other on benches separated by the round table in the gazebo. It was a space conducive for outdoor learning. The place was a herbal garden owned by his father. Falma was worried that the herbal garden in the riverbank might be swept by a flood. But because the de Medici's family was full of divine art of water users, his father uses the art to prevent the river from overflowing to the herbal garden. Thieves targeted that place because expensive medicinal plants were grown there. Of course, to prevent the property of de Medici's family from being stolen, nighttime security systems of the herbal garden were flawless. It was such a herbal garden. Falma was looking around the herbal garden while waiting a while ago, and he had seen a familiar herb from his original world. He found out later that it was a plant used in traditional Chinese medicine. There were also unknown herbs unique to this parallel world. This is how I speak normally, Eleonora-sensei. Was it okay to Eleonora to be called that way? Or was it supposed to be Bonfoy-sensei? As he was trying to think of a better way to converse, he was interrupted immediately. It's Ellen, you know. Still, why do you seem so different? Fine, I'll confess. My memory is somewhat hazy because I was struck by lightning. You should have told me earlier, Ellen pouted while sulking. After all, certainly, being struck by lightning can change your personality, but perhaps you will recover soon. You must appreciate that your life was saved. Ellen stood up, looked at him over her shoulder, and showed a pleasant smile. That translucent smile was dazzling. She went out of the gazebo towards the river. Falma followed afterwards. Today's lecture is not a pharmaceutical lecture, it's to check your divine skills. Ellen asked Falma if he remembered all the divine skills, divine art techniques. Ellen had taught the original Falma many divine arts. He seemed to be an excellent student with a good intuition. I wonder if it's possible to make water and pour it on the cup. When Falma said so jokingly, Ellen held her brow. It is a fact that I don't remember everything. With writing tools in Falma's hands, he listened attentively to Ellen's lecture.